Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me again today, and welcome back to Dominions 5, and specifically, welcome to my first ever multiplayer game of Dominions 5. I did play some games of Dominions 4 multiplayer, but this is the first time I've played a multiplayer game of Dominions 5. So for those who don't know, Dominions 5 is typically played over email with asynchronous turns. Since it is a turn-based strategy game, you can play without all the players having to be connected at once. So what'll happen is a turn will be set for a certain length of time, typically 24 or 48 hours, and in that period of time, everyone will receive a file that gives the game all the information it needs to set up the start of the turn. They make their moves, they send their moves in a separate file back to the main server. Usually this is done through a remote server that's been hosted by a very generous soul referred to as Llama Server. And you send your moves back to Llama Server, and it compiles all the moves, runs the turn, calculates what happens, and then sends you all back the file for the next turn. So this is an 11-player game. It has turns right now are, I think, set for 24 hours, I believe, and it'll be extending to 2 days later on in the game as things get more complicated. It's on a very large, randomly generated map that I have not looked at, so we'll see how it goes. And I'll kind of talk about Machaca as we go as well. Alright, so Funny Guy, which is what I named my god. Giving your people stupid names is kind of a tradition in Dominions multiplayer. So Funny Guy, the god of Machaca, spring in the year 0 of the Ascension Wars. So here's my start. Let me zoom out to see the map. Right away you may notice some things appear duplicated. That's because this map is a wraparound. It wraps around both north to south, so if you roll around it's like you're rolling a ball. And it wraps around east to west. So really, it's just one big ol' landmass, about like that, with water around it. There are no water factions in this game. It's all land. So it'll be interesting, because there's 11 land factions all competing, and from looking at this map, it doesn't look like there's much by way of choke points. Yeah, there's a few cave provinces. There are quite a lot of forests. There are a few mountains that provide some movement blocking, but not a whole lot. Like, that's a mountain pass that will probably be passable most of the time because my Dominion has heat. Those mountains provide kind of a blockade, but you can just go around fairly easily. And beyond that, there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot that will stop people from moving wherever they please. So this will definitely be interesting because I'll have to use the what few mountains there are as strategically as possible to provide movement blocking. So, in this game, of course, the victory condition is controlling Thrones of Ascension. There are 11 of them, one for each player, and you have to control 7 of them to become the new god. So we've got the Throne of Zeal, which spreads dominion and gives your blessed troops morale. The Brass Throne, which brings in gold and a couple of gems. All of them spread dominion at least 1. The Throne of Beasts, which gives you Animal Awe and 2 nature gems. The Throne of Pestilence, which increases death, spreads your dominion, shifts your dominion scales, and produces 3 death gems. So honestly, this is bad, but this kind of makes up for it, because that's a lot of gems. The Throne of Thorns, which gives you poison resistance and nature gems. The Throne of Flames, which gives you 3 fire gems and fire resistance once you've claimed it. The Throne of Spring, which gives you growth, an air gem, and the ability to recruit the Mage of Spring, who is a level 2 air, level 1 nature mage with Strength of the Spring. So, kind of cool. Slow to recruit, though. 4 recruitment points when forts only mainly supply 2. I don't think you can get above 2 in the early era, which is what we're playing as. The Throne of Ice, which gives you water gems and cold resistance. The Throne of Storms, which gives you air gems and shock resistance. The Throne of the Stars, which gives you Astral Pearls and boosts ritual range, and the Throne of Stability, which gives you magic resistance. All level 1 thrones, nothing too powerful and earth-shaking. We can see the pretenders here, so we have Kargstag of Tianxi, Funny Guy of Machaca, I can't pronounce that, Ocelotl of Mictlan, Giant Naked Snack Noodle of Pangaea. That might be a trick. That makes it sound like he's an earth snake, but I don't know if that's true. Hope Rises from the Depths of Agartha, Gallothal the Everlasting of Niflheim, Ilmatar of Rus, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Yomi, Grand Bull of Hinnom, Bull of the North for and Demonic Industries for Beritos. These two might actually be bulls. If they are bulls, then that means that these players have taken Awake Expanding Monsters, which will be interesting. I happen to know the Hinnom player, who's a very prominent guy in the Online Dominions 5 I've lost my words. Community. The Online Dominions 5 community. He actually runs the Discord server for him. He usually likes to take a lot of scales, so it would be interesting if he had changed his strategy and taken an Awake Expanding Monster. But anyway, so that—those are the factions. So Beritos, which is a nation that uses a lot of blood magic and a lot of water magic, if I recall correctly. Which uses a lot of nature magic and some air and earth as well. Hinnom, which is a giant blood nation that uses a lot of very, very powerful blood and fire mages. Yomi, which is a demon turmoil nation, relies on having turmoil scales. Rus, which is a new nation that I actually don't know much about. I think they have water and air magic, I want to say. Maybe some death. I don't remember, in all honesty. I know they have a berserker unit. Niflheim, which is a cold, water, air, death, and a little tiny bit of blood giant nation. Agartha, which is a cave-dwelling, water, earth. They have some death, but it's mainly earth magic for Agartha. That's their big path. Pangaea, which is mostly nature magic. Mictlan, which is one of the real classic bloody, blood-using rush nations. They have a sacred unit that is infamously powerful, mainly because it can be recruited in any fort. Machaca, me, we have death, fire, earth, and... Well, I'll show you. I'll actually show you all of our paths anyway. We'll discuss myself in greater depth here. And Tianxi, who has a whole bunch of paths at low levels, and very powerful high-level mages that can fly very easily. So that's kind of cool. The Hall of Fame is set at 15 slots. There's nobody in it just yet. And we can look at my nation overview. Right now, of course, I have nothing. All I have is Machaca. You may have noticed, Funny Guy is on the field. Yes, I took an Awake Pretender. And I did not take an Awake Monster for expansion. Instead, I took an Awake Rainbow. So this is the Buddha Father, who is one of the pretenders available to Machaca. And I took a whole bunch of paths at low levels. Well, relatively low. He's still an enormously powerful wizard. And, basically, in order to do this, I kind of had to tank my scales, but my strategy here is kind of reliant on my understanding of the nation. Machaca is a little bit of an interesting nation. We'll talk about that. So scale-wise, I have 1 productivity, 3 heat, 2 growth, 2 misfortune, and 1 magic, and my dominion strength is only 5. So my dominion strength is fairly low, and I'm going to have to build a whole bunch of temples to bring it up. So Machaca. Machaca is interesting because most of its troops are bluntly crap. Basically, everything from here on over is pretty much garbage. These guys are absolute garbage. These guys are pretty close to garbage. Hyena Clan. Bird Clan archers are okay. Machaca militia are absolute garbage. Pygmies are interesting because they provide a lot of arrows on the field, but their damage is quite low. See, these guys do 9 damage. These guys only do 7 with a not an impressive missile attack. And their morale is super, super low. So, on the plus side, they're very small and they cost almost nothing to keep up. On the downside, they don't do much damage. So if you get Flaming Arrows and Wind Guide, spells that buff your archers, may be valuable in large numbers. Other than that, not really valuable. The interesting troops are... one of the big downsides of Machaca is that most of their troops wear literally no armor. So like Machaca warriors, protection 0. Hyena Clan warriors, protection 5. Even Lion Clan warriors, which are pretty much their elite, only have protection 5. The interesting troops are, you have Rhino Clan warriors, who have protection 11, and formation fighter, which means they can fit 4 units on 1 square instead of 3, which means they can concentrate their attacks more. So these guys, they have okay protection and their skills aren't bad. So basically they're slightly beefier than average chaff. They catch arrows very, very well, and they do quite a bit of damage when they attack. They have a long spear so they can repel and all that stuff, so that's all good. However, they cost a whole bunch of resources. Their gold and resource cost is even. So in order to build them at all, you need a whole lot of resources, which I, at the moment, don't really have. Lion Clan warriors are basically slightly better stat-wise than Rhino Clan, but have half the protection, so they die faster. War Lions are one of the interesting Machaca units. This is the kind of unit that most factions can summon, but I can build them for gold. They cost almost no resources, they're undisciplined, they can see in the dark, they are animals, they have pretty high morale, but absolutely terrible magic resistance, and terrible protection. The only thing they really have going for them, and this is actually pretty good, is they get 2 attacks at high attack values that do a lot of damage. So they're shock troops. They're very fast, they tend to attack first in melee. If they can get in without being shot up, they can do a tremendous amount of damage, but they will die very quickly as well, so they rely on shattering what they attack as quickly as possible. I also have access to elephants. Elephants are super expensive, and stat-wise, if you look at their stats over here, don't seem terribly impressive, but they're size 6 and they can trample, which means instead of having to attack, they can just move into a square and crush whatever is there. And they can even trample cavalry because they are so big. Against other players, these units are very, very bad typically, because if they rout, they will trample through your own army. Their morale is not exceptional, although it's higher for Machacan elephants than for most elephants. And their magic resistance is dreadful, so against mages, they suck. But for early expansion against independent provinces, war elephants are fantastic because they have that trampling ability, so they can crush large numbers of smaller infantry without taking much damage at all. Also, they're fast. They have a high map move, which is nice. I have Spider Clan archers, which have a poison bow that's very, very neat. It will stack up poison damage, and, you know, that can be useful. It'll do damage over time. The only problem is they cost so many recruitment points. They cost 20 recruitment points each, which is more than almost anything else. Only the Lion Warriors, the Spider Riders, and the War Elephants are more. I also have Spider Clan Warriors, which are... Here's the thing. They're basically Machaca Warriors plus poison. And it's strong poison, which is okay, that's nice, but I don't think it's really worth the cost of them. I would rather have Rhino Clan Warriors if I wanted frontline fighters. I have Spider Riders, which are a very, very interesting unit. They're not terribly fast, they have 0 protection, and they have 10 hit points, which doesn't seem great, right? Here's the interesting thing about them. In addition, they have a couple of different attacks they can use in melee, plus they have a poison bow attack, which is neat. But the main cool things about them are they have this web spit, which can stick somebody in place, and you have to basically fight your way out of it before you can move. And if someone's webbed in place, they can't move, and their defense tanks and their attack tanks until they fight their way out of it. And if the rider is killed, so if they lose 10 hit points, the unit doesn't disappear. Instead, you end up with a giant spider unit, which is an animal, and that giant spider continues to fight. And I believe either you keep the spider after the battle, or it gets a new rider after the battle. And honestly, I don't remember which, because I haven't used these much. They cost so many recruitment points. I have 234 recruitment points. I could recruit a total of 5 of these, and that would be all my recruitment. So I don't really use them all that much. And then they have a sacred unit, the Lion Warrior, and the problem with the Lion Warrior basically is that he's not special. He doesn't have much going for him, except he has a magical attack, which does a lot of damage and also does fatigue damage. So, you know, against certain high-value targets, that can be useful. But he doesn't have a shield to protect him against missiles, he doesn't have super high attack or defense skill, he doesn't have, like, really super high hit points. His hit points are high, but not incredibly high. So, they just tend to die before they pay off their high cost. So troop-wise, basically, Machaca is pretty weak. Most Machacan troops are garbage. You do have Rhino Clan Warriors, you have War Elephants, War Lions are situationally effective, so are Spider Riders, and so are Lion Warriors. But your main recruitment is going to have to be Elephants and Rhino Clan. However, Machaca has fantastic mages. You have the Voice of Lion, who is a weak mage who is also a priest and a commander. These guys can lead armies just fine. And has Beastmaster, so they give extra morale to your animals, including your War Lions and your Spiders. You have the Hyena Clan Witch Doctor, who is a perfectly decent mage, with a price that is pushed down somewhat by the fact that he's a heretic, so he lowers Dominion in areas that he is. But 1 Fire, 1 Earth, and 2 Death are pretty respectable paths and open up some very interesting spells. You also have the Buddha, and Boda, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this. I'm going to call it Buddha. The Buddha is one, I'm not going to say the best, but a very high quality mage. Slow to recruit, so that's a downside. Heretic 2, but gets 2 death, 2 earth, and 1 fire, and then another one. So potentially 3 death, or 3 earth, or 2 fire. Of those, 3 earth and 3 death are definitely the preferable options. Wasteland Survival, which is, not really valuable, has a forge bonus. So when they forge items, they cost 1 fewer gem, and they're shape changers. They can change into a hyena, a were hyena, and the were hyena form is stealthy. So in other words, the Buddha in were hyena form, where it doesn't lose any magical powers, can move into other people's territory unseen. And for a high-level death or earth mage, that is a very, very dangerous ability to have. On top of that, Buddhas can be recruited anywhere. They are not capital only. Anywhere you have a fortress and a lab, you can recruit Buddhas. Voice of Spider is a spy unit, which not everybody has, but since they take 2 recruitment points, I'm probably not going to recruit too many of them. They are quite stealthy, very stealthy, and also sacred, which is, I guess, nice. The Spider Clan Witch Doctor is okay, cheap. Only researches, as well as the Voice of Lion, but it does have some cross paths, so these guys might be useful for site searching, potentially, although I'll get to my strategy and why that's not terribly important. Spider Clan Sorcerers are slow to recruit, have 2 random paths in Fire, Earth, Death, or Nature. The only thing you might want Spider Clan Sorcerers for instead of Buddhas would be for, like, the Death-Nature cross path, and there's not a whole lot that's really valuable in the Death-Nature cross path. I'll kind of have to take a look. I think there's a couple of items they can forge that Buddhas can't forge, but anyway, not terribly, terribly useful. And then you have the Lion Queen, who has 3 fire and 2 nature, and the Lion King, who has 3 nature and 2 fire. So you have big nature mages, big fire mages, and big stealthy death and earth mages. The Buddha is fantastic. The Lion Royalty are pretty good, especially because the Lion Kings have quite high leadership, and the Lion Queens have okay leadership. And on top of that, they do have a chance of getting another random path, which makes them even more valuable. These guys are recruit only in the capital. These guys can be recruited anywhere. The Spider Clan Sorcerers also, I believe, can only be recruited in the capital. Yes, the Forest of Spider. The Witch Doctors can be recruited anywhere, but the Sorcerers can only be recruited in the capital. So, that's Machaca. Weak troops, very good mages, including a lot of stealth capability. And a lot of ability to do death summons and death spells and all kinds of cool things that aren't terribly, terribly common for nations like this. So why did I take an Awake Rainbow Magic Pretender? That's the question, because in order to do that, I had to tank my scales. I don't have very good scales. I have Misfortune. I had to take an extra point of heat, which will tend to fatigue my troops a little bit. I only got 1 point of productivity, 1 point of magic. Not great. So why would I do this? Basically because, since I have these great mages, and in particular because I have the Forge bonus, the Buddhas can forge for 1 less gem. Also, they might have access to Earth 3, which means they can make Dwarven Hammers that allow them to forge for 2 less gems on top of that. That means I can build magical items very, very cheaply. For a level 2 magical item, it's about a 30% discount. I can build basic level 1 5-gem magical items for more than half off. So in this game, I'm going to hope to leverage that and the stealthiness of the Buddhas to be able to A, go into battles with a whole lot of magical items forged that can give me advantages, and B, win wars very quickly by basically sneaking stealthy mages into my enemy's territory and then having them reveal themselves and attack all at once. So, Funny Guy, he's here, first of all, on the first turn certainly, he can give me a big boost to research. He has 38 research points by himself. And secondly, he can site search. He can site search for every path that I have access to, plus a couple more. So in the early game, he'll just be going around following my army and site searching behind them. And so hopefully I will build up a very significant gem income very early on. That's what my aim is. You can see here, that's the wrong button. My gem income right now is 6. Hopefully I'll have that up to 12 or maybe even 15 by the end of the first year. That's kind of my hope. I don't know if it'll work out that way, but cross your fingers. On top of that, because of his cross paths, he'll have access to forging a couple of boosters that could be very useful. With 3 earth, he can forge earth boots, which boost your earth magic. With 4 earth from earth boots and 4 air, he'll be able to forge, what's the name? Staffs of Elemental Mastery. The one, they give you a boost to all of your elemental paths, which will let him ratchet up even further. And then he can forge all kinds of cool items, he'll be able to cast all kinds of high-level spells later on in the game, and he'll be able to give boosters to my Buddhas and my Lion Queens and Lion Kings. And of course, since he is the Buddha Father, he also has that forge bonus, which means items he forges are cheap. So I'm going to change shape. Part of my strategy here is going to be keeping Funny Guy invisible. He's stealthy, he can't be seen. Even enemy scouts, unless they are spies, cannot see him. I think even spies only have a small chance to see him. So, hopefully, I will be able to keep anyone from realizing where my god is or what he's doing or even that he's awake until much later on in the game. And of course, the strategy of my enemies is going to be affected by the fact that they don't know who my god is or where he is or what he's doing. That's the goal. So, the first turn is going to go pretty quickly. With all that strategic discussion, the most important thing here is of course going to be setting up my research. He's going to become a prophet. You're going to move over that way. I'm surrounded by woods. This province is probably valuable because this province probably has very high income. These provinces will have a lot of resources. You can see this one has 37 resources, which ain't bad. And it has 2 chances to have more magical sites, so that's probably where I'm attacking first. Assuming it isn't impossible to take. Yeah, actually I'll move down there with the scout then. I'm going to recruit. I'm going to start by recruiting a Voice of Lion, which are very, very useful to be spamming out early game because of their leadership ability, their Beastmaster ability, and their research. And then I'm going to recruit 3 lions and 1 Rhino Clan warrior. I want 3 lions because I already have a whole bunch of chaff here, and I want the lions to provide the hitting power. Research-wise, I need construction up to about level 4 fairly quickly. That said, I won't really be able to forge much in the first year, so I can delay that a little bit. My Buddhas, when they're moving around all stealthy-like in the middle and late game, the spell that will probably be most valuable to them will be Horde of Skeletons, which lets them spam out a whole bunch of skeletons, obviously, and use them to block for themselves. So in my ideal mid-game, I'll be moving around Buddhas in groups of 2 or 3, spamming out skeletons and backing those skeletons up with things like fire elementals, which they will be able to summon, the ones that have fire 3, or fire drakes who can breathe fire. Now unfortunately the fire drakes are not stealthy, so I'd have to kind of figure out how to include that in the strategy. I can work that out though. I could certainly get things like some of the death summons that are stealthy and send those with them, like Shades, or I'm not sure if Shade Beasts are stealthy, I don't remember, but I know Shades are. So, you know, there's a lot of different options. Probably summoning elementals, fire elementals, or even earth elementals is the best option. On top of that, there are some spells in Alteration that are very good for earth, like Earth Meld, Stone Skin as a defensive spell, Iron Skin, of course, also as a defensive spell, eventually Curse of Stones, and Maws of the Earth. Also, in Evocation, my Buddhas will be able to cast eventually Magma Bolts, since they have those cross paths, Blade Winds for killing low armor units, and at level 6, Magma Eruption. Every Buddha can cast Magma Eruptions, which don't even take gems, and cause a ton of damage over a significant area of effect. If I give them Earth Boots, then that buffs both the size and the damage of that spell. So basically, they can cause a ton of damage. However, in order to cause a ton of damage, they need high-level research. I'm not going to start with Evocation because at low levels of Evocation, my wizards are not terribly useful. Fireball is probably the best they can do, and I mean, that's cool. Fireball and Magma Bolts are both cool spells, but not the very greatest. Magma Bolts, actually, I don't even need Buddhas for. Magma Bolts, my Hyena Clan Witch Doctors can cast just fine. So I might recruit a few of those guys just for that. We'll start with the Voices of Lion, though. So research-wise, I'm going to delay construction for right now. Since I have 1 level of magic scales, I started off with some free research. So I've got 1 level in alteration, 1 in construction, 1 in enchantment, and 1 in thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is not one of my high priority lores. Gnome lore would be nice to have. And later on, I'll probably want spells like Control the Dead or Wither Bones in case I fight other undead nations. There's probably going to be quite a bit of undead on my side in this game. Hydrophobia is a good spell, but it's so high level that, and it requires a fire gem, that I'm not really going to be thinking about it yet. Undead Mastery, likewise, so high level, not worth really thinking about. Despite the fact that if I ever fight someone with a ton of undead, it will be absolutely vital. 7-Year Fever is an interesting spell that the Fire Nature crosspath has, which is a crosspath I have, and basically it just diseases everybody in a certain square. So it's just kind of a screw you spell. It doesn't really do anything on the battlefield, but later on it weakens units or commanders. This is actually a spell that thugs hate. If the enemy thugs out some units and sends some commanders at me, some high-value commanders, I can maybe spam 7-Year Fever at them and just really screw them up if I have some Spider Clan Witch Doctors. Anyway, research-wise, thaumaturgy is unimportant, blood is of course unimportant, enchantment is eventually important, conjuration, alteration, and evocation and construct. Basically all of these are important, but early on, it's probably alteration and conjuration. Conjuration gives me some value very early, like Summon Fire Ants is kind of a cool spell, Summon Ogres could be useful in an emergency, and at level 3 I get Phoenix Power, Earth Power to buff my magic paths on the battlefield, and summoning lesser fire elementals and all that kind of stuff. So I think probably I'm going to go down Conjuration first to level 3, and then reevaluate. Then I might pick up Construction and then Evocation, but at that point I may want Enchantment too. We'll do it live. So I've got my recruitment done, my treasury is empty, my pretender is researching, my prophet is prophetizing, my scout is sneaking, my early research priorities are good, and my turn is ready to send in. This will be a very, very interesting game. I'll be delighted to see where it goes. I will be posting these videos up, I want to say probably 2 or 3 weeks behind. So when this video goes up, this game will still be in progress, but it will be, you know, a couple years down the road. And so ideally, I won't be giving away my strategy too much. Well, I mean, obviously I'll be giving away some of my strategy, but my strategy will mutate as time goes on, so we'll see how things go. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hope you're waiting for the next one. I know I certainly am.